If You Have Nightmares, We'll Dance on the Bed by Lefay, Strent. Chapter 4. Warnings for this chapter: violence, blood, and character death. "Looky who I got," Remus announced proudly. Roman, Army General, proven war hero, bloodied, bruised, and barely conscious. "Oh, nice!" Emil gave a thumbs up. "Look who I found!" He waved over at Virgil to show Remus. Remus lit up, bright as a forest fire. "Verge! I've been looking for you." Remus grinned, sinister. His mismatched green and silver eyes noticed Thomas held protectively in his arms. Virgil could feel the burning contempt through the air. Remus wasn't happy about Virgil foiling his plans. Behind him, another person appeared in the doorway. He was obviously human and wearing the castle uniform, though it was covered in rubble and blood, like he'd been rolling around in the remains of Thomas' bedchambers. "Don't you dare touch him!" the guard screamed out in a voice that felt far more suited for laughter. The vengeful glint in his eyes didn't belong there in such a warm face. There was no denying that this really was Patton this time. "Who, this twerp?" Remus laughed, holding up Roman again for display. Remus swung his morning star around to smack into Roman's torso like it was a drum. Roman let out a sharp, pained noise and gagged. "Let him go!" Patton roared and charged in, his sword raised. "Temper, temper!" Remus shouted in glee. He dodged the swing and leaned back almost all the way to the floor, like his body didn't have bones. Somehow he managed to hold on to Roman and his weapon without toppling over. Patton readied another swing, but Remus struck out with his foot. His boot planted right into Patton's ankle, bringing him down to one knee. As he fell, Remus knocked the sword out of his hands. "You humans, always rushing in to die," Remus said as he swung his Morningstar sideways, presumably to decapitate Patton's head off. The head of the Morningstar bashed into Patton's cheek. Although his head turned from the force of the blow, it remained intact. The sharp points of the weapon barely pierced his skin. An outline of orange light enveloped Patton's body. "When I said let him go, I wasn't asking," Patton said, and sprang up, driving his fist into Remus's abdomen with all the force of a battering ram. Remus coughed out spittle, choking on his own lack of breath. He immediately lost hold of the Army General and went flying through the air. He hit the far wall, sliding down. The humans around him ran away, though some bravely stood their ground, weapons ready. Patton used the opportunity to check on his wounded friend and drag him to safety. Emil glanced repeatedly from Patton to somewhere past Virgil. "Oh, I see. That's cheating." "All is fair in a fight for your life," Logan said. His hand had been raised, an orange glow dancing around his fingertips. Whatever the wizard was doing, it had saved Patton's life. Emil didn't like that. "I guess that would make you the legs. So supportive," Emil complimented. He whipped his axe around to sit the handle against his shoulder. He leaned forward. "Cut the legs, and the rest of the body comes tumbling down." Emil moved in a dead sprint, far faster than a human. He jumped at the wizard, arms thrown back to ready a devastating swing. Logan would react too slow. One of Virgil's shadows snaked out and caught Emil by the ankle mid-leap. With a grit of his teeth, Virgil forced the shadow to whip him away, hurtling him into the hard ground. Emil bounced off from the force of the blow. Before he could fall back, Patton was already there, sword pointed down directly over him to pin him. Out of Emil's arm, a shield sprang out. The tip of the blade dented off. Off balance, Patton threatened to fall forward, and Emil, taking the opportunity, kicked his leg up to ensure that he did fall. His leg met Patton's sternum harshly, and Patton grunted as he was kicked away. Behind Virgil, a roar bellowed out like a warning. Their other enemy barreled towards them like a raging bull. Virgil tried to react with his shadows in time, but it was too sudden, too fast even for him. Remus nimbly dodged out of the way and hurtled the Morningstar at his head. This time, too, he found himself thwarted. An orange light shone in front of where Virgil stood, just like with Patton. However, this was a literal wall of transparent light. Virgil could see Remus through the barrier, see his snarling face when the Morningstar bounced against the wall harmlessly. Enraged, Remus spun around to go after Logan, but the same thing occurred. "Just let me hit you once! Just once!" Remus screamed, battering at the wall again and again. "I promise I'll kill you!" The barrier began to crack. Keeping his calm, Logan breathed out a slow breath in concentration, the blues of his eyes crackling as he shifted spells. His outstretched hands switched from an orange to green. In an instant the orange barriers dissolved, only to be replaced by wood and vines breaking through the stone floor, shooting up right below Remus at a terrifying speed. Up and up Remus went, shouting all the way. The tree, it pulsed with life, plants covering Remus more each time he cut and cursed. "Stop!" one of the guards shouted out, and yet again Virgil had to switch direction. Remy had run out to where Patton lay on the ground, clutching his sword for dear life, while Emil pushed down heavily with his axe. The boost in strength Logan's spell had given him earlier was gone now, and it was sheer desperation and adrenaline keeping the Fae's superior strength from outright butchering him. Remy threw up his hands and shot a light into Emil's face, exactly like he'd done with Deceit. Emil shrieked inhumanly and jumped back, scratching wildly at his eyes. "Don't underestimate a one-hit wonder, bitch," Remy snarked. The only thing that saved Remy from Emil's flailing counterattack were the guards, who rushed in to thwart him. They pushed the Fae back, keeping him on the back foot while he frantically tried to clear his vision. "Is that the only spell you know?" Virgil asked, coming to stand by him. "Pretty much," Remy laughed, like actually laughed in this life-or-death situation. "Thanks, Remy," Patton thanked as he struggled to his feet. His breaths came in heavy pants, but he remained standing, steady and strong. "You should really get back, though. It's dangerous." Remy scoffed and went to retort, but Virgil shoved Thomas into his arms. "Excuse me, what?" Remy demanded. "I can't fight if I'm worrying about him," Virgil explained. "Stay back and fire off one of those light spells if they get past us." Remy glanced down at Thomas once and then shrugged. "Don't have to tell me twice, babe." Virgil stood alongside Patton, watching the guards circle around Emil. They kept a careful distance from Emil's crazed swinging. "Can the wizard handle the other one by himself?" Virgil asked. Although they had just met, Patton didn't question where Virgil's loyalty lied. Instead, he glanced behind them, where Remus still struggled at the top of the mass of plants. Logan stood at the base, an unshakable pillar. "He's good, so it should hold him for a minute," Patton said, turning back to their own fight. "Great, a time limit," Virgil grimaced. "You good to go?" Patton squeezed the base of his sword. "Doesn't matter. I have to be." Just then, one of the guards was thrown through the air. Emil seemed to have mostly recovered, and the guards warily backed up. Patton charged. He raced between his comrades, and Emil spread his arms wide as if welcoming him home, a mad grin on his face. Virgil could practically see Patton skewered the same way the other guard had been. He shadowed after Patton, ready to pull him back. But Patton had sensed the trap. He feinted a direct attack and then rolled to the left, transitioning into a tumble past Emil. The spear that shot out of his chest had no one to stab, and Emil blinked in shock. With the distraction provided, Virgil jumped up to land on the end of the spear before diving forward with a sweeping kick. From behind, Patton slashed at his back. Emil cried out and swung his axe again. The two moved out of the way before they could be sliced up. Together they flanked Emil. "You've been bad, Virg," Emil snarled. "Bad, bad, bad!" He swung at Virgil. Virgil hopped back, another swing, and Virgil darted out quick to swipe at Emil's arm, raking claws down the exposed skin. Emil hissed, the sound mimicking 1,000 angry cicadas. He bared fangs when Patton attacked his back, yet his sword met another set of blades that slid out of Emil's shoulder blades. "Bad, bad, bad, bad!" Emil shrieked. He threw his axe in a wide circle, twirling around. Patton barely managed to put his sword up in time for the axe to knock him away. Virgil dove in again. He punched Emil in the jaw, and his other hand would have come up to blind his eyes with his sharp nails, had Patton not pulled Virgil back at the last second. Lucky he did, because a bunch of blades emerged from Emil's arms. They fell back to catch their breaths. Emil wouldn't give them a reprieve. He shot forward, and, rather than hit Virgil with his axe like expected, Emil rammed into Virgil with his shoulder. Virgil lost his footing and fell to the ground. Virgil grabbed at his chest, hands coming away wet. Oh, Emil must have sharpened his shoulders. Made sense. Emil stalked towards Patton. Virgil could hear the sound of metal banging against metal. He coughed and cringed at the bitter taste of blood in his mouth. Damn, how deep it had been cut. By how many blades? It didn't matter. He had to get up. However skilled Patton had proven himself to be, he didn't stand a chance by himself against a Fae. Virgil rose to his feet, blood pouring from his chest to spill against the floor. He ignored it and staggered forward. His eyes blazed and his vision tunneled as his shadows lurched out to wrap around Emil's raised axe. Virgil held it in place, a master with an unwieldy puppet. Emil pulled fiercely at the bindings trapping his favorite weapon. He glared venomously over his shoulder at Virgil. He could have broken free easily, given a chance to wait out Virgil's waning consciousness. But Patton was still there, and he didn't hesitate. He thrusted the sword up into Emil's throat. Virgil watched from behind, the way the blade yanked out to the side, nearly severing his neck completely. Virgil let his shadows fade. Emil's body fell. The guards around them cheered in victory, and as Virgil's legs gave out, he wondered if they would cheer the same way when they killed him. Guess he'd find out if he woke up.